Hello and welcome to the first edition of the LiveSchool podcast. If you're looking for the flow effect, you are in the right place. This is the same podcast with the same great content. So if you are looking for content that has to do with classroom management, PBIS, student behavior, school culture, behavior management, all those things that make your school a better place to work, a better place to teach, a better place to learn for your students, you're still in the right place. That was our mission, always our mission with the flow effect. It's still going to be the same mission with the LiveSchool podcast. We're still going to keep our episodes brief. If you would like to listen to some of our earlier interview episodes, those are still on this feed. So if you just scroll back in our catalog, you can still find great interviews with principals, superintendents, educational influencers, all of the above, all sorts of great conversations. Those are still there. So if you'd like to go back to those, you still can. We changed the name of the podcast to the LiveSchool podcast, really just to make it easier for us to share the content between platforms, because we're on TikTok, we're on Instagram, we're on YouTube, we have a website, we have our blog on the website, and Twitter. We have all these places, and we wanted to be able to share back and forth and under the same name. So that's why, and also make it easier for you to share content to others. So, and speaking of share, if you go ahead and would rate our podcast if you're enjoying it, and leave us a review, leave us a comment on Spotify, subscribe, whatever podcast player you're listening to, all those things help us grow the show and help us bring you great content that helps your school. Now, speaking of helping your school, today's episode is going to be 6 steps to launch your own house system. So, what is a house system? A house system is a behavior strategy where students are divided into teams called houses. Okay, now students within each house work together. They earn points, they support each other, and they compete against the other houses. Usually a student is assigned to the house during a house induction ceremony, and they stay with that house until they leave the school. That's probably like let's say you were in middle school, you may have an induction ceremony for your incoming 6th graders. They would stay in those houses 6th, 7th, and 8th. Same thing for high school and 9th graders. Before we jump into what is a house system, let's talk about the key components of a house system. All right, number 1, culture. Each house needs a unique culture. So this is something you can collaborate with students to create. They can do house flags. They can do house mottos. If you're working with younger students, they can vote on team colors and mascots, all those kind of things. And we actually spoke with a school, St. Vincent Ferrer School in Florida. And at that school, each house has its own chant, dance, handshakes, all those little cultural touch points. They just make it more fun to be in the school. So, and by including students in building that culture, they have a much stronger sense of the community and pride, not only just in the house, but in their school overall. And all those things lead to more academic benefits, less behavior. Think about it this way. If you could start, a behavior program, your first goal is probably to decrease negative behavior. You want fewer referrals, you want less fights, you want less skipping, you want all sorts of bad stuff. You want less of those things. By doing this, you won't only just get fewer of those negative things, you're going to encourage good things as well. So you're going to get less of the bad, more of the good out of your students. Now, number 2 here, this is how you do that actually. Clear expectations. Students and teachers need to know what kind of behaviors will cause them to gain and lose house points. And house points is how you keep track of things. If you're going to have like a house cup or these competitions, you've got to keep score in some way. So by knowing the clear expectations, this keeps unconscious bias from creeping in, and it reassures students that their behavior will be assessed fairly and consistently, regardless of whose class they're in. Now, this is part of your student code of conduct. It could be in tandem with your PBIS expectations. All those things are a good starting point for identifying positive and decreasing negative behaviors. Teachers also need to know how frequently they'll be expected to update those points, and assign point-given activities, distribute incentives, that kind of stuff. That consistency, that is, everyone needs to be on the same page with. And, by setting some sort of standard, all right, we're going to make sure we're doing this many points a week, that kind of stuff, that can be helpful. It kind of comes down to your staff, though. Now, ask them, talk to them. What are they comfortable with? How much are they comfortable emphasizing this? And make sure everyone across the board has close to the same expectations teaching-wise. which brings me to number 3, teacher buy-in. The house system must be implemented consistently, like we've been saying. That's a key word that comes up a lot in education, consistent. Most of the programs you do, if you are consistent with, you're going to see better results than not, obviously. But in this case, consistently means that teacher buy-in is critical, because students are going to notice if one teacher takes points away for certain behaviors and another one doesn't. And they're going to know if one teacher gives out hundreds of points every class period and one gives out 2 a semester. That's not going to take long for them to figure this out. But the major barrier for your teachers and buy-in in a house system, and might be why you haven't already done this, because there's not a lot of, when you're talking about what is a house system, there's not a lot of downsides here. It's really hard to look at this and say, oh, my school is not going to be better if our students are more competitive, they're more bought in, and they're rooting for each other. There's a high degree of camaraderie. It's hard to say your school is not going to be better if you do that. The thing that's hard to do is your teacher's plate is only so big. So how can you manage how much your teachers actually have to do during this? And one way to do that is using a behavior management platform like LiveSchool, which why we're talking about it here on the podcast. Really, if you can make that burden easy, and I'd say it needs to be digital here. That way, it's just as easy as a couple points, click here, click there, and they're done. And the rubric lives in the same place, whereas opposed to if you're doing like a paper system or something like that, it's just going to become very cumbersome if you don't do it digitally. So that brings me to number 4. Students need to be able to redeem these points we were talking about for some sort of reward. There are a few ways to do this. You can have a reward store, full of all sorts of, knickknacks, stickers, wristbands, movie posters, maybe snacks. You could also make the rewards all team based, which is one thing, and house systems do a lot, and they'll turn these into house celebrations. So like you run competitions and the winning house gets the celebration, or maybe they get a second tier of the celebration. Either way, it's perfectly good. It works really well. And you may do a combination of the two. Maybe they can spend points individually, and also those points go to their houses, and you can do house competitions in those as well. Both work, and they both encourage students to hold each other accountable and still be motivated on an individual level. All right, let's talk about how you can start your own house system before this fall. So you're probably listening to this during the summertime. If you're not, this was recorded in the summer with the intention that you could do these steps in a very short amount of time. So if you're listening in the fall, that's fine too. Let's make a goal. We're making this happen in the next semester. Okay, that's the ideal. So 6 steps. Step 1, build your houses. Determine how many houses you need and how many students you want to include in each one. So when you're setting up these houses, the goal is for students to feel a sense of community. So don't make them too large. Like if you have, there's a lot of you in big, very, very big schools. If you have 1,000 students in a house, it's probably too large. Okay. There should be enough houses to motivate students to be competitive, but not so many they feel like their house has little chance of winning. So there's a balance there. So like I said, if you have a couple houses and you got 1,000 kids in each one, it's easy to kind of get lost in there. It's not really feel a sense of community. If you make them much, much smaller and you have 20 houses of 10 kids each, now all of a sudden, I don't know if my house has any chance of winning because there's 20 other houses. So there's the magic number. There's probably much, much closer to something like 4 or 5, maybe 8 or so. Probably we're going to be single digits though, for sure. Step 2, assign those houses. There are a variety of ways to assign and then announce those houses. That's where the fun part comes in. You can make them grade level. You can students within each house that are in the same grade. You do multi-grade houses that consist of students, of different grades. You can do totally random. That's basically picking a name out of a hat or using a random name generator. That's probably closer to your Harry Potter example with the sorting hat. You can do semi-random. You can edit the random results after you get them to make sure you have an even distribution of all your demographics. Or you can be very intentional. and use specific criteria to assign students to houses. That last one is probably more reserved for smaller schools because you got time. You're going to know all of your students a little better than a very, very large school. All right, step 3, choose a house management tool. So like we said above, it's going to be helpful if you can keep track of these points on something other than paper, a board, or an Excel spreadsheet. Grade-wide and school-wide systems, they require great collaboration to be effective. So typically, behavior management platforms like ours are really helpful in this case. But whatever tool you choose, make sure it's simple and it shouldn't demand too much time from your teachers. Because like we said above, those key components of a house system, if this adds things to your teacher's plate, it's less likely to be able to get done because they've already got so much to do. So whatever you choose here, make it easy to use for your staff. Step 4, choose the behaviors you want to emphasize. So there's a reason you're doing this. There's a reason you're listening to this podcast. There's a reason you're thinking about starting a house system. What do you want to emphasize? What do you want to improve? Now, align your rubric and your points to meet those things. So make sure you're getting what you want out of this system. If you're coming to this because your students are not engaged in class, or maybe they're too loud in the hallway, make your expectations have to do with engagement and appropriate behavior in the hallway, and then give points for meeting those expectations. That's how you improve in this situation. That's how you use this system to benefit your school. But identify those things first and remember why you're doing this. All right, step 5, introduce houses to your teachers. So you'll probably consult your teachers throughout steps 1 through 3. But when it's time to roll out your house system to everyone, you need to share the benefits of a house system. And if you can provide stats about how they've improved behavior at similar schools, that's helpful. But the thing that's going to make the difference here is if you train them on how to use what the tool you've chosen to use and emphasize their role in making the house system a success. One way to do this, and this is a tip we picked up from talking to schools all around the country, is give teachers leadership roles within their houses. Attach your teachers to the houses. That way, let's say you're in a high school and you teach an elective, and you're not really a part of many teams. It's really hard for you to be connected and really care a whole lot about a house system unless you're actually in it. So include your teachers in that house system. Assign them just like you use students. They'll get competitive too. They'll get into it as well. Step 6, introduce your houses to students. Now here's where you bring the energy. Here's where you host the big house celebration, or you build anticipation for it by revealing the info about the houses during the week leading up to it. At the ceremony, you draw random names to assign houses, or you put the posters on the wall. This is your big reveal, okay? And because student buy-in is just important and teacher buy-in, plan events to help house members get to know each other and begin building your house community throughout the year. You can do that through regular meetings, or you can do that through individual house competitions. Those are the kind of things that build the community of your school. Okay, so last part here, and I'll leave you to this. You need to create some sort of house rewards center. So some schools choose to create like a school store or other type of reward center display incentives. Let students visit the reward center. So and what I mean by that is this could be actual things. This could be a place they go to, or it could just be a place where you recognize the winning house or the scoreboard. Something that pretty much on a daily basis, they can see the connection to this house system and their day to day. So if it's just in the cafeteria, you display the house point scoreboard every day. That's helpful when we're talking about creating that buy-in with students. They can see a tangible benefit to the good work they're doing and the good things they're doing. And the same thing goes with teachers. All right, guys, that is the show this week. I hope you guys have a better idea of what you can do for houses. I'm going to put some notes and links in the description to help you out a little further. So feel free to check those out. And like I said before at the beginning, check us out on any of our socials. We're on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Come read our blog over on the LiveSchool website, whyliveschool.com. And before you go, don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to rate us and share it to a colleague this summer. And we'll see you next time. Have a great day.